Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Dead Air Live on the Dead Air Full Spectrum channel, simulcasting also with KGRADB.com, KGRA on YouTube and on Facebook. My name is George Lopez. With me, as always, Mr. Ken DaCosta. And I know you guys are as excited as we are with what is going to transpire tonight. Very, very special guest tonight, Ken. And who might that be?
That would be a gentleman who needs no introduction. And his name is Travis Walton, one of the, I guess, I would venture to say, two most iconic and remarkable alien abduction cases in history, along with Benny and Barney Hill.
Yeah.
And just to let everybody know, Travis is in studio right now, where he's working with our producer, Bill Forte, just trying to get his audio squared away. So Travis is with us. They're just working on his audio right now, and we'll get the okay on that. But this has been a long time coming. We are so honored and happy to have him here with us tonight. We're going to talk a little bit about not only his experience, but his general view, his overview on the UFO phenomenon. So very much looking forward to that. We can see him in the studio right now. But like anything else here, Zoom, StreamYard, anybody who's done that, you know how it is. You got to work out the bugs. So when that happens, we'll be bringing them on.
You know what makes a good partnership between you and I, Ken?
What's that?
I noticed the things. You changed the background.
Yeah.
You changed the background to something more ethereal, something that's more in tune with what we're going to be doing tonight. You know, I mean, you know, you're good at decorating. That's one thing I've always complimented you for.
Oh yeah.
You know, one of you out there, first time viewers with us tonight that are coming in for this particular interview, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget also the thumbs up for likes and the reminder bell for upcoming content. Yes, producer Bill.
Well, we need to bring Travis Walton up on the main screen so we can try the different options for his microphone settings. But I do want to make sure that everybody knows this is a great book that Travis wrote. This is a must-have book. Obviously, I'm honored that he autographed it for me right there.
I'll rub it in.
It's a great book, folks. Go check it out. Go check out his website. All right, let's bring Travis up, guys, and let's see if we can work out his audio.
Okay, bear with us here. Live podcast. You know how it is. Let's bring Travis in and see what we got.
Yeah.
All right, Travis, let's try your different options for the microphone.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Oh,
well, that's option one.
Just like that.
I just got to tell you guys a quick story with Travis.
No, go away, Bill. We don't want you here anymore.
He spoke at Pine Bush on 2 different occasions at the UFO fair.
Really?
And yeah, he phenomenal as always. And hopefully we're going to get him back soon in the future. He's a true gentleman. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed speaking with him in a more private setting in the vehicle while driving to and picking him up from the airport with Amanda Curran, who produces here at KGRA. He is an incredible person, a very positive human being. It is an honor to know that man on that screen. And you guys will get a little bit more in depth with him, I'm sure, during the show. But we had an adventure. He came in from where he resides in Arizona, and we get to the hotel in Pine Bush at 2:15 in the morning. Nobody's there. So I say, Amanda, there's a phone on the wall. This is a true story. And Travis, to tell you, it was crazy. So the lady comes down because there was nobody in the lobby. And I say, we're here with Travis Walton. He has a room reserved. They go, we don't have a room. I was like, what are you talking about? You don't have a room. So we had to scramble to get Travis in a hotel room at 2:30 in the morning. And then they resolved the town resolved the issue the next day. But I'm sure Travis remembers that crazy night, right, Travis?
Well, I don't know. I've been in a lot of places and a lot of times.
But guys, I mean, it was bizarre.
Travis, I would just like to ask you who drove that night.
Well, it wasn't me.
It was
Bill
me.
drove. Okay,
Yeah.
so we've answered one of our questions.
Well, guys, have a great time. And like I said, make sure to check out Travis Walton's website and his book, which is awesome. And have a great show with Travis. Travis, God bless you. God bless your family. Have a great show with the guys.
All right, come back, see us, Bill.
Thank you.
Yes. Once again, want to thank you, Travis, for joining us this evening. You are, for lack of a better term, ufology royalty, predominantly with regards to what Hollywood had presented your story as, but then you pushed it forward and you persevered within the community, talking with either other people who have been abductees to other people in the field from a scientific perspective and trying to get continued answers with what it is that we are dealing with regards to these contacts. So again, thank you for joining us this evening. We're going to have some fun with it. Well, where do you reside now? Where are you living now?
Still live in Snowflake, Arizona.
Wow.
No kidding. No kidding. I mean, for me, I've been here in Florida now probably over 40 years, where it is consistently humid, where it's consistently dry over there. It's got to be weird when you do get over to those areas that are like swampland for us. You come to Florida very often? You get a chance to visit?
I've been there quite a few times over the years, but not this year so far.
A lot of people have stayed away from traveling as of late, but I thank you again for joining us this evening. Those of you that are in the chat joining us again for the first time, you've heard the promotions or seen the promotions that Ken's been putting up for tonight's show. Welcome to Dead Air Live. But the first thing that I would like to do is turn it over to Mr. DaCosta because he has been chomping at the bit. He has been participating with MUFON for quite a long time, his fascination with ufology. And I've got several questions I want to get back with you to in a little bit. But Ken, I'll turn it over to you first, sir.
Well, thank you very much. And Travis, on my own behalf, it is a real pleasure to host you this evening. And thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your time tonight. It's greatly appreciated, sir.
Well, thanks for having me.
Oh, indeed, our pleasure. Now, I mean, we want to give you a little bit of latitude tonight because I'm going to go out on a limb here and say you've probably told your story a few hundred times, and I'm probably underestimating that. So, I mean, we'll certainly get into some details as you see fit rather than asking, us asking right out of the gate for a recounting of everything. But as I mentioned before we brought you on, yours is probably one of the two most iconic abduction cases in history, along with Betty and Barney Hill incident. But this happened, as you mentioned, in Snowflake, Arizona in 1975. Travis, were you born in Arizona? Are you a native?
Yes,
there?
I was. I was born in Phoenix.
Okay. And what was it like growing up for you as a young man? I mean, did you play sports? Were you an outdoors type kid?
Yeah, I've always been an outdoors person. It had a lot to do with where we lived. I just lived in a rural place a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. And as far as growing up, typical kid in the 70s, I graduated from high school in 1975. So typical kid in the 70s, we heard about UFOs and things like that. Was your experience or your introduction to that pretty much the same as it was with the rest of us? Movies, TV, magazines, things like that?
There was very little reference to aliens when I was a small child. It was mostly, it'd be a cartoon type thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I don't remember anything.
Yeah, I know for myself growing up, as even a very little kid, I was like fascinated with the space program when astronauts were still heroes back then, and being launched was something that was remarkable rather than just pretty mundane the way we look at it now. We shoot things into space. And then when this whole UFO phenomenon came, I was kind of like, well, what is this all about? But going to that night, there is something I'm not sure a lot of people know. I've heard you talk about this, is that that particular night, there were other reports of something in the sky from other people that night. Your sighting wasn't unique in the regard that other people saw it that night as well. Not
Yeah,
maybe your incident, but they
there
certainly.
there were other people in the area that saw it,
Mhm.
and also there were some things nationwide. That was the night that they had just had this, where these sightings had been correlated with missile silos shutting down
Mhm.
all across the country.
Yeah, I mean, and you weren't unfamiliar with the spot where this happened because it was a clearing. I think that you guys had cut some brush waiting for a controlled burn or something like that. So you certainly probably passed by this area on more than one occasion on your way out of there. Is that correct?
I don't remember ever going through that part. That was a part of the contract we haven't finished yet, but the road out of there, we just worked up to the point where it was shorter to go south to hit the rim road than it was to go back the way we came.
Mm-hmm. So was there any reason why you just took a different route, or it was
just like I said, we move across the contract and cover the acreage. In a given day, you got 7 men cutting trees and putting acreage behind us, and so that's what moves us forward on the contract.
Yeah, I mean, in describing what you saw that night, you have described it as something that's metallic. And you've also talked about different types and different forms of craft, whether that's cigar shaped, the typical ones, cylindrical shaped, triangular shaped. We've created in our world different vehicles for different purposes. We have bulldozers, excavators, planes, jets, cars, and each one of those serves a different purpose. And I want to ask if you think the different variations of craft that people report maybe fall into that category as well, that different vehicles are used for different purposes.
Yeah, I would think, it's just not necessarily different entities, but just for different purposes. Certainly, these smaller disc-like craft are more, utilitarian and little small mission kind of a thing. Maybe not the craft they arrived here in.
Mm-hmm. Probably, I mean, you have some things that maybe for observation and other things for, we don't know. I mean, we're still trying to figure out the purposes of that. But I wanted to bring a couple of pictures up here because I found this kind of fascinating. This is just, if I can find this, an artist rendition of what was seen that night. And for those of you who are familiar with Bob Lazar's story, this is his drawing of what he called the sport model, which he worked on at Area 51. And the similarities between those two crafts struck me as being incredibly similar.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And it's actually the most similar of all the many descriptions. Of course, I've seen some other things in my lifetime too that correspond in other ways, triangular, sphere, those kinds of things.
Yeah. How much of that do you think are maybe black ops projects? Things that we have.
People who don't want to believe this say, yes, it's got to be some secret science project of ours. But here's the thing. These giant black triangles have been seen since the 80s. Now, you're going to speculate that we had this super, super advanced technology way back in the 80s and 50 years, 60 years later, nothing ever leaked about it. Nah, I don't think so.
Yeah. Well, one of the things,
the technology was way ahead of anything we had then and now.
Mhm. Well, I think one of the common things when people talk about black triangles and a lot of these craft that they spot is that they move silently.
Yeah.
They hear no source of propulsion. In the case of your incident, that was a little bit different, though. There was a noise from this craft that you reported. You could hear and as well as feel physically. Do you think that that is some type of clue as to the propulsion system of that particular craft? Looking back on it
I
now,
gave a talk to some engineering students once. I think it was MIT or something, and these guys were very, very interested in the exact sound that it was making, which, of course, very hard for me to describe in a way that is as much use to them. But that was what the part that they were keenly interested in, because maybe they could decipher or compare it to theories that they had. But heck, it could have been a malfunction that was creating the noise. I don't know, because the craft that returned me was silent.
Were they pretty much looking at these particular students? Were they looking at this as kind of a harmonic propulsion? That's the kind of thing
they weren't really trying to inform me. They were just trying to learn for themselves if it corresponded with theories that they were working on.
One of the things that, Travis, that you've talked about in the past is, again, that sound and the heavy thunder to a constant vibration kind of a thing. And one of the things you compare is where we have been in the last 50 years, 100 years, as far as technological advances. And if some of these civilizations are millions, if not billions of years advanced on that, where we are right now, one of the things we talk about is harmonics and what we can do with certain things, being able to allow this sound to be able to suspend certain items. And the possibility is that if they are millions or billions of years further advanced than us, then the type of things that we are just discovering in scientific labs right now would be the ancestor of what they're capable of doing right now. Would you agree?
Oh yeah. Well, I'm sure that our science is definitely far in advance of what's been revealed, but perhaps not so advanced as the performance of these craft, as it's been described by military observers.
True. I mean, you take a drone today and take it back 200 years, and that's witchcraft. Just 200 years, 200,000 years advanced in what the capability is, and I'm going in a different direction here, and Ken, I want to throw it back to you right after, but it just came to my mind earlier today doing the research is in these encounters with these extraterrestrials. 2 points come to mind for me. Number one, kind of the pheromone theory. You walk into a home or a bar and there's just been a fight and you can sense the animosity within the air. During this abduction, and you've accounted for what you had to do to defend yourself to try to get out of there, your fight or flight mentality. But did you have a sense of their energies? Was it benevolent? Was it malignant? Was there anything that you could sense from it that would tell us this is almost as you would expose? You've said before, us.
Well, I'd have to meditate on that one. I can't.
Right.
I can't recall being real conscious of a particular odor.
Yeah, or a sense of energy from them, right? And if they're looking at us as just a science experiment, there probably would be an absence of that.
My perception of the situation, my interpretation, was just overwhelmed by the pain I was in, the feeling of suffocation. It was total panic, and that just sort of bypasses reason and perception in ways that you can't imagine. It was the most terrifying time of my life.
It had to be. I'm sorry, Ken, to interrupt.
Oh, by all means, not a problem. Travis, that night, how close physically did you, at the closest point, did you get to that craft?
Well, at the moment the blast of energy hit, that was the closest point. And that was the reason I had one theory that perhaps it was an accidental discharge. And just by closing that gap, the energy jumped to Earth through me.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that perhaps now, again, looking at it almost 50 years later, having a chance to think about this a little bit, that what had happened to you in terms of the blast was just something residual from the craft's existence, being there, its propulsion system, or something along those lines? I think that's reasonable.
Yeah, perhaps something moving through that dry fall air at high speed could have developed a static charge that they might have been aware that I was putting myself in danger, but not necessarily an intentional beam or something that they were firing at me necessarily.
Well,
I had another theory, after learning sometime later that that area of the rim there is has the highest frequency of lightning strikes of any area in the United States outside of the Florida Everglades, which has the #1 frequency.
Right.
But so if there's a high frequency of lightning strikes, perhaps there was a lightning strike on the craft that just, and I was a secondary discharge.
Yeah.
Grounding.
Yeah. Do you think there's a correlation with appearance of a craft, any craft like that, in an area where there's a high incidence of lightning strikes and being seen over so many nuclear bases as people have reported?
Well, in the case of the lightning, there's a phenomenon that I only learned about recently. I was at a show that there was a gem show next door, and they had some crystals there, and they said, "This is fulgurite." I said, "What's fulgurite?" Fulgurite are crystals that are formed when lightning hits the Earth. You got millions of volts and millions of degrees, causing an instantaneous crystallization of the substances that are there, and they're not created artificially. So the theory being that perhaps they were in the area looking for these crystals.
Yeah. We've pulled up a picture of that particular area and some crystallization on a tree stump there. And I'm not sure that's exactly what you're talking about, but it gives the viewers some kind of, excuse me, indication of the heat signatures and what they can do and the residue that they can leave as well.
Well, when I brought this subject up on the Joe Rogan show, they just real quick looked something up online and had some real exotic formations that from lightning strikes that I'd never seen before. But the variety was amazing. They're not all one look to them.
Yeah.
And a lot of it has to do with the nature of the minerals in the deposit.
Mm-hmm. In going back and returning to that area and people doing their own research there, can you tell us a little bit about some of the residue that's been found? Was there high magnetic besides the crystallization? Was there any kind of radiation signature or singeing?
In a return trip there in just before the movie came out, which would have been 92, 93, the Paramount wanted to do an interview on the site. And I said, no, we can't do that. We don't go out there at this time of year. There's 3 feet of snow out there. There's no vehicle that can do it. Well, they pulled some strings or something and got these snow cats from the ski run. And from the highway, we rode into the site on that and made it to the site, took pictures, did an interview. And I found out later that Mike Rogers, the crew boss, thought that there was another reason we were having trouble locating the exact spot other than deep snow. that the trees had grown faster and were larger than they should have been in the time that had gone by. And without saying anything to anybody, he went back and took core samples after the snow melted and discovered that, yes, indeed, that counting back, see, there's one tree ring for each year. And counting back the number of years to the time the incident happened, there was suddenly a huge increase in the thickness of these growth rings. And that was quite a shock. And, it was, you could see that for 86 years or something of that nature, back to the time the tree had very first grown, the tree rings were quite uniform. And then at the time of the incident, counting back, in 93, you just go back and to the time it happened, and there was a very sudden and distinct increase in those growth rings. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until quite a few years later that it was discovered that this increase in thickness of these growth rings was directional, that the thickening of the tree was only on one side of the tree in the direction that the craft had been. So going around the circle of the clearing, this thickened side of the tree was towards where the craft had been. And that was extremely interesting too.
Mm-hmm. After this incident, Travis, and everything, we know about the polygraph tests and all the rest of that. When were, or should I say, who in the UFO community was the first one to reach out to you? Whether it was a citizens organization, but who was the first to reach out to you and say, hey, we want to talk to you, we want to hear your story?
Well, the first contact came from an organization that was the oldest and largest at the time. It was the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. And they had contacted my brother during the search and, gave their contact information, said if he should be returned or if there should be, we can find him or whatever, get in touch with us. And so he was the one that he contacted after we reached his home in Phoenix. Now, I was in a very fragile condition, but my brother was desperate to get some medical attention. And the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization actually had 2 medical doctors in their Phoenix membership who volunteered to come to my brother's house and perform an examination there on the spot that morning. And then further tests were done in one of the doctor's offices the next day.
Okay. A couple of questions for you on this. And if I'm ignorant of this, I beg your pardon, but were you at any point put through regression hypnosis like a lot of abductees are, or was that even a thing then?
Yeah, they had some hypnotist in their membership, Dr. James Harder. Okay. And he did some hypnosis. And this was in the presence of a couple of other psychiatrists that were in the APRO membership. Mm-hmm. They were present during the hypnosis. Mm-hmm. That was a kind of a landmark for me because I was so traumatized. I couldn't hardly speak at all, let alone. That was the first time anyone had heard entirely an account of what had happened while I was gone.
Well, this is a pretty common thing abductees are asked to submit to. And I was curious as to your general feelings about that practice, about regression hypnotherapy, because it doesn't come without risks.
Well, I know, and I know one of the other crewmen was regressed in a way that I don't think was exactly, must not have been done properly, because it was extremely traumatic for him. In my case, I lucked out, and I did not consider hypnosis to be an alternative lie detector or anything like that. For me, it was a turning point in my ability to handle the fear and the stress, the intense calculated relaxation procedure to bring about the so-called trance was something that allowed me to really turn down a lot of the fear that I was having. It was still a very hard thing to handle after that, but still, it was a major turning point in being able to talk.
Yeah. Well, there has to be care taken with this because of the possibility of place memories. How the question is asked is everything, because you don't want anybody to place any suggestion in your mind. You just basically want a hypnotherapist to ask you in your own words what happened and not suggest something. So
Yeah, absolutely. Be kind of like in court, where were you standing when you committed this act? That kind of a thing.
exactly. So and so I always kind of wondered about that, because it's almost the type of thing that's part of the process now. It's like, so I just wonder, people who have been through it. I don't know a
I
lot of
think
people
that's
who've been
one area in ufology and paranormal that could probably use a great deal more development and study in order to get the technique correct.
I agree. And before I bring George in here, I want to go back to this whole technological thing. I have maintained, I'm interested to know what you think, is that we are guilty of our own arrogance here when we talk about it's impossible to travel these distances simply because we haven't yet. So we
Yeah.
kind of look at things through that lens, because technologically, and I'm just curious how you feel about this. Technology depends on your starting point. Okay. I mean, fire was the greatest thing that ever happened to man. And then after that, primitive tools, and then the steam engine, then the combustion engine, and then nuclear power. But what if where another civilization comes from, because of the resources available to them, they actually start with nuclear power? Where we've led up, but that's like the fundamental thing they're dealing with. How advanced must they be at this point in their evolution?
Well, I look at it a little differently. Learning, from astronomy, the incredible enormity, the size of the universe and the age, that some of these star systems are millions, billions of years older than us. So rather than progressing more rapidly than us, that they actually, heck, they could have been progressing at a tenth the speed that we have progressed at, but they're just vastly older than us. And everything technologically we have is 300 or 400 years old. Everything. Before that, the only thing we had was fire. And so, if they had, say, several million years to develop, we can't begin to imagine what the limits would be. The so-called, oh, that's impossible. They couldn't do that. Since we can't, they can't.
Yeah. All right. George, I'm going to bring you in here. Travis, I will return, sir. Thank you for your time. I'll be back a little bit later. And I know that chat right now is hopping, and the messages of support that people are giving you, I'm just kind of peeking off and cheating here to the right-hand side. is phenomenal. We'll get to some of their questions a little later if that's okay. But right now, George.
Yeah, and actually, there's a couple of them, comments and questions that I wanted to bring up for you now, Travis. First of all, a very nice sentiment from Aaron Bush, who basically wanted to say thank you for your honesty and bravery in telling your story. And thank you, Aaron. But the questions also coming out from there are quite compelling. One is from Jeff Hilton. Travis, since you have been abducted, can you tell whether other stories out there are fake? And if so, what do you tell them? I know you've told some interesting stories about that. People who always want to come up and give you their experiences. They want to share in it. How do those circumstances come about where you're kind of skeptical about what they're giving you?
Well, I can be, quite supportive of people who have experienced a similar trauma. And I've always wanted to avoid getting myself in a position of being uh, a pass-fail kind of a thing. This is a good case, that's not one. And pretty soon it would be never ending. And I wouldn't want to do it for one good reason. People were passing judgment on what happened to us, and they didn't even have the facts. I'd say get the facts first before you make any judgment. So I in spite of the fact that I've experienced this, I don't want to be in the position of judging someone else's experience without doing the research. And
the 1970s were an iconic time for things within the realm of the paranormal. And Travis, one of the things that I was looking at were the parallels during that time frame. What happened with you with regards to your abduction, the unbelievable list of the serial killers that were going on at that time. This, of course, which is the Bluff Creek incident with regards to Bigfoot. I mean, these are iconic, including you, sir. Iconic. That's the important word to use in regards to who you have become within this field. And you carry that weight with such grace. And I appreciate that part of it. But was there something that was just beginning? Was there a paradigm shift explosion at that point? Why do you think everything was just happening at that time? And I don't believe it stopped. I think it's still happening. But that seemed to be the catalyst, that particular decade. Did you feel the same way, or have you looked at those comparisons?
Well, I've heard those kinds of things, and just that the most common suggestion is that nuclear weapons stimulated a great surge in interest from these entities, because the potential to destroy this very special utopia in a very vast universe. Got a lot of dead bodies, not bodies, but planets and whatnot. It's a very special planet, and the potential to destroy it all is just ridiculous. Where the technology got way ahead of the degree of civilization that we have here,
and the savagery that still exists within man.
Yeah. Stan Friedman had a phrase that I thought was interesting. Why would they want to come and talk to us, a species whose primary interest seems to be intertribal warfare? And isn't it the truth?
Thank you. And I've mentioned this on several different discussions with regards to UFO contact. And I sit there and go, who would want to bestow upon us the unlocked mysteries of the universe? Because we'll weaponize it. It's just within the nature of man at this point in time.
Immediately, yeah. And even if we didn't weaponize it and destroy something, just the fact that it would destroy the economies of the earth. They're all based on a primitive technology that overnight that would collapse, and that kind of vast economic collapse would be result in riots and destruction.
Yeah, if we didn't weaponize it, we would villainize it some way, shape, or form, rather than look at the greater good to what it is. Quick question on off topic. Somebody had mentioned in the chat also. Hearing what sounds like the beeping of a phone. That's.
I don't know what's going on there. Let me check if I can see that.
I know you were talking to Bill. I don't know whether or not he hung up and you didn't.
I'm going to close the sunshade there. The sun has moved a bit.
Yeah. Our very special guest tonight, who has now exited the camera, Travis Walton. He'll be back in just a second. It's an amazing, amazing night for us here. And again, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, the thumbs up, and the reminder bell. There we go. The mystery has been solved. We're good to go on that. Let's get to another question here in the chat. This one's interesting as well. It's from Steve Clark. Are you still in touch with the other guys that you were working with during the abduction, and what is their feeling towards you and your story of what happened at this point in time today?
Well, we weren't a bunch of buddies when it happened. So, it actually sort of had a tendency to draw us together more than we would have been. When we'd get off work, we'd generally go our separate ways. A couple of guys would pair off here and that way, but generally we led separate lives, and we would be called together to do programs or be interviewed or something like that periodically, but it didn't really make us hang out together all the time. But it was a bond that exists to this day. We all experienced something very profound, and only between each other can we, relate in a way with total confidence, because, as extraordinary as it is, and the extensive disproof of all the counter theories and all the evidence that's been provided, there's always, a little shred of, could this not be true? They're looking for that. So I have to steer clear of telling little bits of information in unusual things about nature or something like that, just because of the unique position I occupy. When I do resort to those kinds of things, I'll either tell all the different people who were there with me or point them in the direction of where they can look it up and verify it for themselves.
Right, exactly. And I see a kind of a parallel too. A very dear friend of mine, if you've heard of the movie The Conjuring and know about the story, again, during the 1970s, dear friend of mine, dear friend of Ken, Andrea Perrin. She's the eldest daughter of the family that went through that. And, there are strained parts of the relationship between the family who went through this ordeal, but it would be like any other family. Whatever kind of a situation could have occurred during that time frame can upset the balance, and that just tends to happen in families anyway, no matter what the traumatic experience may be. In this particular case with them, it was spirit phenomena. With you and your brothers that were out there with you working, it was a UFO experience. Let me bring this one up here for you now. This is UFO T. Says, what role did Ground Saucer Watch play after your return? Did you meet with them at the Phoenix Westward Hotel with Dwayne? Thank you so much, sir. I have studied your case for years.
My memory of them was a little brief, and they kind of got into a dispute, a territorial dispute, perhaps, with the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, and it became a kind of a negative factor, if I remember right, eventually.
Wow. It's again, I would imagine because of the media sensation and the media attention to this, unwelcomed on a lot of circumstances when people have this kind of an event, you cannot escape it, can you? When it becomes something that is this traumatic and rare, you're going to find everybody coming out from under the woodwork looking to get part of that story, because media sells without question. That bombardment's got to be overwhelming.
Jealousy, attention seeking, one-upmanship, kind of a sad look at some of the human frailties.
It's a shame of it. We're speaking with Travis Walton. We've got questions in the chat. This is from one of our good friends. It's how long did it take you to be able to trust anyone with this event? Thank you, Ron.
Well, I was pretty withdrawn for quite some time, and you know that reflected negatively on me too. Oh, what's he hiding from? He's not out here talking to us, so he must have something to hide. So then, when I started doing interviews, okay, I am talking. Oh, now he's an attention seeker, so he can't win. You know.
No, there's no win scenario.
I felt it was important to make people understand the reality of this and not let it get swept under the rug with such silly, baseless kinds of things, which in a sensationalist media, they just got the headline. They don't have to back it up and verify it. I'm remembering now that the guy with Ground Saucer Watch turned out to have fraudulent academic credentials, and so he kind of
really
disappeared. He claimed to have a degree from Bowling Green University, and he didn't. So
holy smokes,
his bid for attention kind of fell through there.
Take one more question here. We'll get back with Ken also, which is UFOT again. Travis, do you know why Steve Pierce believes you were taken by operatives at Area 51? What happened?
Well, I'll tell you, I hate to say it, but you know, we've just been discussing this phenomenon, jealousy. You know,
yeah.
How do you be one up on this? Well, I've got a better theory. Here's what I think happened. I can't deny that it went away. You know, I mean, he's trying to make it go away in a way that puts him center stage.
Absolutely.
He's claiming he thinks that, but I'll tell you what. Go back to the lie detector test. If he really believes that, pass a test to that effect. I think what he's always, from the beginning, testified to the sheriff and passed lie detector tests about were that he saw the event and it was extraterrestrial. And his hypnosis, again, verified that, seconded that notion anyway. So it's a sad situation, but I think deep down he, you know, in his heart of hearts, he believes what he originally saw and said and testified to for so many years. This new idea that, well, that was really just the government simulating something. Oh, baloney. And again, you know,
in the 1970s,
so much work that's gone into providing evidence and all this stuff, and then to suddenly just flarp something out there, and then people just take, oh, okay, all right, fine, and run with it like as if all you got to do is make a claim. And
are there times? I mean, I applaud you for not being more jaded because of the opportunists that are out there, whether it's somebody that wants to say, oh, well, it happened to me too, and you know for a fact that it didn't, to those who will sensationalize it to their own financial benefit. And yet you have stayed, not only as somebody mentioned in the chat, true to that story and consistent with that story, but you've still been generous enough with the community and not shut yourself down. And is there a delicate balance there a lot of times with you, Travis, internally?
it sure is a delicate balance, you know, and it so happens you're talking to me at a time in my life when I'm thinking about not doing any more interviews anymore. I just get tired of the fighting the same fight over and over again, providing the same proof over and over again. I could tell these people, do your homework.
Well, this is, I can tell you this, whether it be Ken or myself, and we appreciate, again, this opportunity to explore you. Ken has been in the paranormal for nearly 50 years, for myself, 20, but we come from a background more so of ghost investigating. So it's not uncommon, especially for residential cases, to talk to people who have hauntings in their homes, who are having sensational stories of things that are going on. And our job is to go in there and help validate it for their own peace of mind, not to tear them down. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people in this community, no matter what umbrella that falls under, ufology, cryptozoology, spirit phenomena, that are just in there to be the naysayer, to be the skeptic, and to tear apart and not give some credibility to the experience of what this person has gone through and is still enduring. Unless you're speaking to us right now from a $70 million mansion, you know, Zach Bagans, who is a
Funny
big
you
guy
should
in
quote that
ghost.
figure. People claim that that's the kind of money I got.
That's what I'm saying.
I'm
And it's
driving
not common.
an 81 4Runner with a big dent in the back of it. And it'd be no, actually, I am working on getting a remake of the movie.
Oh, sensational.
Tell it more accurately.
Are you going to be, is it a part of you involved with the screenplay or just as a consultant?
Well, I'm going to stick with script approval,
Very nice.
I didn't have much say. A lot of people blame me for what Hollywood did with the movie, but even Tracy Torme, the screenwriter at the time,
who we had Tracy on probably about a month ago.
And he fought for many things to try to keep it more close to what actually happened. But this new project will be an opportunity to stay true to what really happened and not distort it. However, and people have to get this through their head, if Hollywood is going to make a dramatic representation, there's certain creative factors that must be taken into consideration. A dramatic movie is not a documentary, and it's not going to be point by point exactly what happened. That would be a 10-hour movie, wouldn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's the same thing we talk about with regards to ghost hunting. It's really sitting on a slab of concrete for 6 hours talking to yourself, but they've got to make it into a movie, sensationalized, and people being lifted in the air and dragged around. So they'll put way more into it than is actually necessary. But that's Hollywood. We understand that part of it. But that's awesome. Have things started turning already? Getting ready for this, or are you just in the initial talks?
So far the opening scene, I think we've got a better way of starting off, rather than having the complete terror of the crew fleeing the woods. We're going to start off with me waking up disoriented, making my way into town. It's like, oh my God, what happened? And a sort of a, let's let the audience kind of explore this and work their way into it the way I had to,
going back. Exactly.
It lets them start from where they're at instead of feeling like they've walked into the movie and it's started without them,
It's tremendous. I'm excited about the fact that this project is moving forward. Ken, if you want to come back on with us here also, I know there's a few questions more, and we're going to come up on our break here in just a few minutes, but I'll turn it back over to you, sir, for right now.
Yeah, thank you much. We'll take us into break right now. And actually going to hit another question for Travis right now, if I could do so, from Jane Von Gerlden. So many abductees are returned with a message for humanity. Do you feel you were given one?
Well, I don't know if they told me to say it, but I do have a message. I've tried to summarize certain things. One of them is no matter what you're looking at and considering, get the facts first. Mm-hmm. Don't begin with a belief and then gather points to support your belief. Look at the facts and then see what belief that generates in you. And people get it backwards. They start with a belief and then look to support it, instead of looking for the facts and seeing what sort of belief that brings about in them.
Mm-hmm. I think what we'll do right now, we're about 2 minutes away. So rather than, get into anything to take us over, maybe we'll go to break right now, Bill. And on the backside, I want to talk to Travis a little bit about UFO disclosure and what we are being given and whether that is worth the paper it's being written on. But right now, George, take us into break, and we'll do that on the backside.
We cannot say how privileged we are to have Travis Walton join us this evening. We still going to come back with him on the other side of this break. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Stay with us. You're watching Dead Air Live right here on the Dead Air Full Spectrum Network. We'll be back with you guys in just a little bit. Stay with us.
Hello, who is it? How'd you get this number?
Hey, Ken. Hey, man, it's George. Hey, man, what are you doing?
Right now, I'm trying to chop ice off of my deck here before somebody breaks their neck. What are you doing today?
Me? Oh, ghost hunting. Hey, listen, Bill from KGRA wants us to do a commercial, a promo for the show for them to play. Got any ideas?
I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to film a commercial or something like that. Well, hey, why don't we just do a montage or something, like clips from the show, and just call it a day?
Okay, yeah. Just put a bunch of highlighted parts of the show. Not a problem. I'll take care of that. Listen, have a great day. I'm almost done here.
Yeah, all right, man. Let me know how you make out, all right? Yeah, you bet. Be good. I'm okay.
Tony, I love you.
I love you too. Yeah, you know what? That's why I hate when they say, oh, people in the Northeast are so rude. I'm like, you, I'm down here and I'm being nice, and everybody's like, not even a wave. I'm like, you're not going to get the coronavirus from waving at somebody.
A little close up view. Check this out. Hello.
Hang on, let's get us on camera again so we can wave. Wave back, Robert.
Yep.
If you wait.
Robert, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing some time, inviting us into your home.
I co-authored a book with Andrea Perrin, if anybody was not aware of that.
No one is aware of that.
No, and I've never been to the Conjuring House.
Yeah. I wrote a book
We're going to do this again.
with Andrea Perrin, and I've still never been to the farmhouse.
Did I mention I wrote a book with Andrea? I wanted to, it's over my shoulder there, and I've never been.
We took a 2-week absence from this, and now we're back with
to the Conjuring House.
Dude, I'm hiding, man. It's COVID. Oh, I'm sorry. It's
What's going on?
I love that blanket. I'm having blanket envy.
I know you are right now, right?
Yes.
Sometimes I move it around with my body. It's like Ouija meets Twister. In the middle of the night, I contact spirits just by rolling around on it naked.
Watch Dead Air on KGRADB.com Sundays from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific.
And also, don't forget to check out KGRA YouTube and KGRA on Facebook for all the amazing shows, guests, and topics. Did I mention that I wrote a book with Andrea Perrin?
Yeah, Travis, Ken and I almost every week we're on the phone. We're talking about the upcoming shows, the guests we're going to have, and then we talk about the weather and then the aches and pain. I got up from my recliner today and I pulled my calf muscle. I don't understand. It just aged, and then I took a nap, and when I turn my neck now, there's that pinched nerve by the shoulder blade. If anything, we need medical advice from the extraterrestrials on how to get past this.
When you reach a certain age, you hurt yourself getting out of bed in the morning. That's just the way it is. But welcome back, everyone.
Yes. Very special guest, Travis Walton of Fire in the Sky, the book. You can find it on Amazon. And, of course, you guys all know the motion picture and the soon-to-be remake, which is going to be absolutely incredible. And again, we thank you so much for joining us tonight, Travis. And I know that, as you were saying earlier, doing a lot of these interviews, it becomes the same redundant regurgitation of everything that everybody's asking along the way. And I take pride, as well as Ken does, to try and go outside of that also. But there are certain things that people either in the chat are going to ask about, even people that I talked to, hey, Travis is coming on, they wanted to know about. But the biggest thing is the community, the UFO community, UFO conferences. When you are dealing with what is transpiring in the field right now and moving forward, do you see things lacking with regards to management, ownership of the UFO community, that they are not paying attention to, progressing forward on? I got into a fight years ago with Richard Nolan on the show because I said, you guys just constantly bring up the same stories. You're just telling other people's experiences. Why are you not going out for your own experiences? He wasn't very happy with that. Should that be part of the field?
Oh, I don't know. I think that this is a pretty rare event. I wouldn't find fault with somebody for just exploring other people's reports, because as common as you think they might be, it's really kind of a rare event. How many people have said to me, well, I've never seen anything like that. And I go, well, do you ever look up? And they're kind of like, stop. And it kind of catches them by surprise. I'm a very outdoor sort of a person in a part of the country that is very clear skies. It's not overcast, and you can see the sky a lot, and there's long open stretches of road. And so I expect to see more sightings or hear of more accounts confided to me sometimes by, like police officers, people that are out. They're trained observers. It's their job to look around, but they're certainly not in a position to make it known that they've seen these things. Mm-hmm. But so people share things with me, and I'm honored by that. But
do you still to this day, driving at night, taking a walk in the evening time, do you look up with certain anticipation?
Yeah, I do. And the incident that I had with the giant black triangle, I was surprised at my reaction.
Describe that.
It was just a point of light off in the distance, but it approached so fast, you wouldn't believe that something could be that remote. When you're driving along and you see a 747 coming into the for a landing, you know it's going hundreds of miles an hour. It'd fall out of the sky, yet it seems to be barely moving. Well, this thing just flashed from one little point of light to 3 lights, and this gigantic, I mean, really unbelievably large object stopped right over the top of us.
I wanted to ask Travis, if I could. 20 years later, we had an incident in your state called the Phoenix Lights. Can you give us some thoughts on that?
Yeah, the Phoenix Lights was one of these giant black triangles. It so happened that it moved slowly over the state. The one I saw moved very quickly, stopped abruptly right over the top of us. This was, I would have never reported it, except that there were a huge number of reports immediately following it. Other people saw it too. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't anything like the Phoenix Lights. And the Phoenix Lights it moved so slowly. And I know they can move unbelievably fast. When it turned 90 degrees and shot off towards the Pacific Ocean, it accelerated incredibly fast. So in the case of the Phoenix Lights, I doubt it was like they were having mechanical trouble or anything. I think it was a show that was put on. Mm-hmm. A lot of people think that they're lucky to glimpse these things. You were talking about, why don't these researchers just go out and make their own sightings? But I think it's basically at the election of the aliens. I don't think sightings are accidental. And, I've had, 45 years to think about this. I doubt the aliens slapped their forehead and said, aliens, so these humans spotted me again. I'm going to have to be more careful next time, I go so far. I'm so far from what I originally thought. I was kind of subscribed to the anthill theory. If you're walking by an anthill, do you stop and say, I think I'll stop and have a conversation with that ant right there? But no, it's more like, if you saw one when you were 12 years old and you see one when you're 45, they know it's you.
Yeah. And
it's because their capacity for knowledge is vastly greater than ours, I'm presuming, because of the technology. And a lot of people may have forgotten this thing called the Utah Data Center. It's a giant computer, covers acres and acres and acres, takes millions of gallons just to cool that thing. And basically, it's recording every electronic transmission on the face of the earth. This was on 60 Minutes. You can look it up online. I'm having you go look it up. I'm not making this up. It's one of those stories. The Utah Data Center is huge, but it just, went quiet. Nobody wants to talk about that anymore. Nobody refers to it. It's just this giant super secret thing that they couldn't really say it's not there because it's huge. I mean, it covers a great amount of area. I saw Aerial America thing on the thing just this last week that showed pictures of that thing from the air. First time I'd ever seen that. But if humans can store that much information, certainly these beings can handle a simple thing like remembering you from a past encounter, as it's not that much information. And I thought it was kind of arrogant and self-centered and maybe self-important for people to say, oh, I stepped this way and then it moved that way. And it was like it was responding to me. Heck yeah. I think these sightings are selective. So for this researcher you were talking to, go out and have your own experience. It's not really up to us. It's up to them. They pick and choose who and when they're going to be seen. And I think with a sort of an agenda. In general, it might be nothing more than a gradual conditioning process.
Yeah.
First just to admit that there's something else in the universe. It's astonishing that people who, when you give them a little basic astronomy, that there's literally trillions of planets in this galaxy alone, and that many of those points of light that we see in our night sky as a single star are actually entire galaxies.
Correct.
Like the Milky Way, our galaxy. The universe is so huge to presume that we're the only life here. Wake up, people.
Yeah. In Arizona, I know that I can't think of her first name, but there was a councilwoman there, Barnwell, I think her name was, and she was ridiculed for actually coming forward and saying, my constituents would like an explanation of what happened that night. And I think the governor at the time, Symington, made a big show about bringing in his assistant dressed as an alien, and then later on admitted that he had seen something like that. But as usually is the case, the military kind of, we were lighting off flares and things like that. What I wanted to ask before we went to break was, last year was supposed to be a big event with the disclosure that we are studying. The military is studying this. They're taking reports more seriously. So they came out with a report, which in my mind said a lot by saying really nothing. So what I wanted to ask is that in terms of this disclosure that everyone was all excited about, I mean, it seems like we're just getting the same kind of, it's national security, we can't talk about that. Are we getting better, Travis? Are we getting to a point? You mentioned maybe it's a conditioning type of thing. Who eventually is going to decide
the problem
that?
with this disclosure, this recent series of events, it began with the announcement that we're going to make this disclosure, and then along came a new administration, and they didn't want to do it, but they can't say, we're not going to do it. You were promised this, but we're just going to shut it down. So they just gave a fake disclosure that was just kind of we already knew all that stuff. This is all just stuff we've already seen. The Navy gunship camera footage was released. Now, you can't do this stuff. This is classified information without approval from on high. But it was done in a very measured way. Late on a Friday, this is where they announce things that they don't want to get too much attention on. That way, excitement dies down by the time Monday rolls around and the new news cycle comes on. So it was a soft release. And prior to this new so-called disclosure, and so in order to fill the space, they basically just didn't want to say, we're not going to do what the last president did. We're going to give you what was promised, and then they didn't.
Right.
We'll just name it that.
Yeah, it was a whole lot of nothing. Let me ask you this: do you think, because you've obviously, because of your situation, you've got to talk to people, like I assume you maybe talked at one point before he passed to someone like Stanton Friedman, and people that we admired in the community because they asked questions. Do you think, after talking to some of these people, that we are in fact in possession of alien technology, and we have used that technology in some everyday, like they talk about the microwave oven and things like that, and how we made this leap? Do you believe that that's the case?
Well, I think that it's pretty likely that our government came into possession of some things. Maybe it was wreckage or something.
Right.
But I think people who are demanding disclosure are barking up the wrong tree. We, unfortunately, live in a world with competing nations And the biggest deterrent against them is not knowing what we have. If we were to throw up on the books, as so many Americans want them to do, here's all of our secrets. Are the Chinese and the Russians going to do that too? No, they're not. But they will have an exact measure of what we've got, and whether our stuff is better than the stuff they've recovered is debatable. But it's best to keep them guessing for our own safety.
Yeah. I want to
that before you go forward, that was the most incredibly accurate and reasonable and rational answer I've heard so far about, because I've had my own
well, I don't think our government is in some nefarious conspiracy against us. They live here. They've got kids too.
Yeah,
they're coping with a powerful information with huge consequences. I think they're doing what they have to do.
I agree.
Yeah. I think playing into a large part of that is also the corporate structure as well. Because if we have these technologies, there's money to be made.
Multi-billion-dollar fortunes at stake.
Absolutely. I don't want to neglect anybody in chat, so every once in a while we'll pop a question on here. Erin Bush again for you, Travis. Have you been able to come to some sort of peace with your experience? We assume you did, but how long did that take that you were able to go out and speak of this openly?
Yes, so we're having a little lag here in the electronics, but I think I've come to a much greater. You know that thing I was starting to tell you about when we saw the giant triangle. My son said, "Dad, should we pull over and take a picture?" And I go, "No, keep going." And I was just so surprised at myself that I wasted an opportunity to get a photo. I was surprised that I'd have that much fear. I thought I was way past that. So I really regret not taking photos. But the fact that there were, other people, I'm looking to get in contact with them and see if any of them took a picture.
Yeah. Now, in 1975, like I said, I graduated high school that year. You were 21 years old. Since then, we've made all these leaps in technology as far as video documentation. But the flip side of that is there is a much easier way to hoax these things. And you see them all over the internet, UFOs and all the rest of this. I don't know how much you pay mind to that at all, but when you see these type of things, having gone through a real experience and just people are just creating things and hoaxing things and just trying to get attention. Do you pay that much mind at all? Does it bother you in any way?
I don't pay too much attention to that stuff. Those the guys, and there's all different forms of this, and it's not just alien photos or something. The people saying things just for entertainment. All they do is sit in front of that computer all day, and we call them trolls or whatever. People that just, you got a name for these people. They do this stuff just to entertain themselves, and it's immoral. It's just, you ought to have a little personal dignity and not do those kind of things.
But I think it also compromises the real stories, things that have happened out there, because I think we get desensitized to it a little bit, where someone could actually post something that's legitimate, but we've seen so many fugazis and false things out there, we tend to pass it over. That's probably the danger of that.
Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're muddying the waters.
Yeah. Joseph Freza has a question for you, Travis. Out of the many shows and documentaries that have told your story, what's one of the most accurate?
Well, I'll give you two. One is a 90-minute special. It's normally a 1-hour show called Paranormal Witness. Mine was an hour and a half in length, much longer than their normal length. And that guy did a phenomenal job, very thorough, very accurate. He went so far as to, the make and model of the truck and the chainsaws, which nobody cares about, but he did his best to make everything as accurate as he could. and it's a phenomenal piece of work. And another one called Travis. And I would never name something after myself, but I didn't name it, but it was another 90-minute documentary that had the cooperation of a whole lot of people close to the story. So a lot of things that were included there, including some things that developed later, like the tree ring research that came out. So it's special in its own regard. So those two are the top two. Paranormal Witness, it's an episode called The Abduction, and one by On Wings production. And the film is called Travis.
Right. Yeah, I'm aware of it. Take one more before we move on here. Our friend Jeff Hilton, why is there such a rift in the UFO community? Why have most become naysayers instead of actual investigators?
Well, like I said, but we got idiots popping up saying things irresponsibly, and that makes people angry. And then there's jealousy. People just attack it. If you can't own it, just attack it.
Yeah. And let's do one here. Our friend Cody Desbian. Travis, what do you think of Bob Lazar's story? Has anything he said made sense with what you experienced?
Well, as I've said before, I don't want to be the go, no-go guy as far as cases are concerned. But as we discussed, the craft he describes is the closest of any that I've encountered. He actually made a deal with the Tester Model Corporation and made these little plastic models. But I know some friends of his that knew him before all this stuff came out. They used to go out to the desert and build a fire and party and stuff. And they knew him as working out there. He wasn't, making a UFO story or talking about anything classified at that time. So they were verifying that they knew he worked there, going way back. And my good friend Stan Friedman, rest in peace, took a dim view of Bob Lazar's thing simply because he wasn't in the phone book. And well, if he was in that really super classified stuff, I don't think being in the phone book is a good litmus test.
Probably not an option. No.
But other than that, I've never had a conversation with Bob Lazar.
Yeah. There are two schools of thought, and people always ask, well, at the end of the day, if we're being visited, what do they want? What is the alien agenda, as they like to say? Because there is a group that says, be careful what you wish for. And I think one of those was the late Stephen Hawking, that we don't want to know what they want, because I go back to some of the TV shows where the guy says, if I wanted to kill you, you'd be dead already. So obviously, they have that capability. So I don't think it's that. So I guess it's speculative at best, but the alien agenda, are we just a method of observation? Or in looking back and thinking about this, Travis, what do you say about that?
Well, for people that think it's all satanic, then everything, no matter what I say, it's all a deception. But I don't hold with that theory. This thing, like I was pointing out about the black triangles, they've been around since the 80s, If they wished us ill will, we'd never know what hit us. You're not going to have dog fights in the sky like some of these Hollywood movies, jet fighters attacking flying saucers and stuff. We'd never know what hit us. They have the technology. They could get rid of us overnight if they wanted the planet for themselves. I don't think that's what's going on. I think that science fiction came up with a brilliant theory regarding the whole thing. And it's called the non-interference directive from Star Trek.
Yes.
That any sort of contact would be harmful to us, not to them. They're perfectly capable of defending themselves, but it'll be so disruptive and so destructive that the best they can do is these very gradual show themselves just short of proof. I mean, they know what camera you got in your hand. It's going to be measured. And for a long time, it's going to be just short of that. And even major events like the Phoenix Lights was a show. So many sightings that people have, what do they want? What do they want? Well, they're just saying, here we are. And for a certain effect, in most cases. I think in my cases, I caused an accident, but I'd say in most cases, it's a sighting that it's as minimal effect as possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, in the state you're in,
I had a real set to argument. I could be totally wrong. This guy telling me, what do you think about these cases where people have been abducted, dissected into pieces, and their bodies dumped on the sidewalk? I was at a conference, a MUFON conference in Phoenix. I said, well, give me a name. Give me one name. The guy gives me a name. I go, no, not the guy that's saying this happened. I'm saying one of the victims. We got DNA, it wouldn't be hard to identify the body of these people. Give me one name. He tried again. No, not the guy that's putting this out there that these things happen. I'm talking about one victim's name. Couldn't give me any. So I'm really skeptical about that because it doesn't fit in with my experience overall.
Well, let's talk about that experience. And what I get out of that is if we go with that assumption that somehow you were, innocently harmed, then the idea of taking you and perhaps doing something, and of course, you don't understand in the state you're in right now, but let's project there was a sense of responsibility that they felt and a certain empathy that they had for you. It's like, my God, this individual, this human got hurt. Let's take him aboard. He's probably not going to be, it's just like caging any animal that you're trying to help. And of course, they don't understand. They're lashing out at you. But
if they were indifferent to my welfare,
a certain empathy there.
It would have been easy for them to dump me on some asteroid somewhere and have a crew that just never believed. They made up a story. Or we're sure the men cut him up with a chainsaw and hit his body, and end of story, So definitely the fact that I was returned at all weighs in favor of the idea that they're not, that they're at least neutral, if not benevolent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I want to take another question here from Aaron Bush. Who do you think has made the most impact on the American public as it pertains to disclosure? If that's an individual or an organization, I guess.
Well, it's been many voices. There's some people who've worked very, very hard at it and haven't. I can name names, but I don't want to do that. But have achieved little response, and then the government finally decides, oh boy, this thing of calling everybody that reports something as crazy or lying isn't working anymore. It's not destroying their credibility, it's destroying our credibility. So we've got to at least admit that it's a phenomenon. So it's a sort of a measured response on the part of the government to prevent the obvious conclusion. I mean, the public has not believed that the government was telling the truth for the most part. That they don't say, well, the government said it's not real, so it's not real, And nobody goes on with that theory. So to give measured amount of corroboration for these events helps to prevent further erosion of their own credibility.
Right. As you said, if it's a matter of weaponizing it because that's what we do best, then if it's a matter of power, because you talked about financial systems collapsing,
Well,
religion collapsing.
one thing that's always given in support of that theory is that when the government comes to Congress, the only way they can justify what they're doing, because it costs money and time and money on the part of the government, is to couch it in terms of national defense, as a threat, pose it as a threat. That way, that justifies us going and having an investigative capacity here. And that's really just kind of the language that the money people speak. What are you doing looking into this stuff? We're paying you to do a job. And they say, well, we've got to at least make sure it's not something harmful. So they necessarily have to suggest it in those terms.
Yeah, understood. I think our producer, actually, if he wants to come in, Bill, do you have a question for Travis? Where is Bill right now? Okay, so anyway, Bill, there he is. Hey, how you doing back there? I had saw that you had a question for Travis. It's kind of something that I think that you and he would know about. I'm kind of in the dark, so maybe you want to ask about the fear propaganda.
Yeah, he touched on that because there's a narrative that's out there that a lot of people are using, labeling extraterrestrials as demonic, evil in nature. Meanwhile, I believe, in my opinion, after speaking with Travis, they did save his life. It was an accidental incident where whatever he got hit by, they took him aboard, and but there's a narrative also out there, Travis. It's like I would say they're trying to say that the deep state is creating an environment where there's false flag, that it's going to be a false flag alien extraterrestrial invasion. What do you think about this narrative that's out there? Because there seems to be two sides going on here. And I know the individuals on the one side, and I know the individuals on the other side. But what is your take on this whole thing about using it as like a psyop?
Well, they would say I'm just deceived because I was treated well, that doesn't mean everybody is. But like I said, name one body of these dissected people, for example. That whole point of view has an initial advantage with the fact that most of Hollywood's alien movies are battling monsters, invading monsters. There's just, a few kind of E.T. or those kind of good guy aliens. But for the most part, most aliens are made, we're battling them and they're going to kill all the humans. And it's countless versions of that. So those kinds of images are banging around in people's memory, and people who want to make a story that gets a lot of attention get, most of these conspiracy theories and rumors that people post on TV of not even non-paranormal sorts of things use fear because people are more interested in something that's threatening. And so
it's a source of control.
Gets a lot more attention.
Yeah. Oh, and it's interesting too because there's so much out there, Travis, and it's really a detriment to the whole UFO community. As you mentioned, there's people out there just trying to make a name for themselves by exploiting other people and trying to discredit them and destroy them, because it's happening. Travis, I'm sure you're aware there are some individuals right now that are being attacked that way. But I understand that people are traumatized, those who claim that they've had experiences. We cannot discount that. But to label all of it as being demonic or evil. I mean, we don't even know if we're dealing with interdimensional entities, or maybe they're coming from our future. We just don't know. I don't know if you can clarify that as far as your experiences, what you thought the origin of these entities, these extraterrestrials were, if they were from another world. But there's so many questions out there still, and a lot of people are looking for those answers, and it doesn't do any justice when you have all this kind of bickering going back and forth. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not a consented effort to try to just get to the truth and see what is really going on.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Newtonian physics is, claiming that, they could never get here. It would take too long. But when you say interdimensional or time travel, that is probably going to be sort of the nature of how they leapfrog that time lag and make it practical to travel from
absolutely
planet to planet. So it's really the same thing. And
well, if it's possible to manipulate gravitational waves, you can by all means accomplish anything that you just mentioned. And there is growing evidence that, number one, I think it was in like 2009 that we discovered gravitational waves actually exist. It was theorized before then. So if gravitational manipulation, or if you can produce gravity, then all of those things, everything you've ever read about is possible.
Oh, yeah, certainly. And we've definitely pouring a lot of money into this kind of research. And undoubtedly, we're making some progress. But again, we can't share that with the world because they're in a race with us to get ahead of us to discover the same kinds of things.
Mm-hmm. Guys, have a great rest of the show. Travis, God bless you and your family. It's great to see you on the show with Ken and George, and looking forward to possibly seeing you in the near future. Take care of yourself.
Hey,
thank you.
All right, man, let's bring George back on. What have you been doing?
Yeah, very special guest, Travis Walton, and again, author of Fire in the Sky. You could find that on Amazon. Also, check out his website. I'll put that link up there here right now so you guys can definitely check it out. TravisWalton.com. As a spokesperson, do you have forthcoming agenda? Let's say you're not going to do so much of these interviews anymore, but you're going to delve into another chapter in your career in this UFO community. Do you have an outline?
Yeah, but I'm not prepared to talk about it.
Maybe we get it out of them. No?
So it's top secret. I understand. That's perfectly fine. Other than the movie, which would be interesting as well. Mm-hmm. Would it be something that's beneficial to all of us to become a little bit more aware of certain aspects of the UFO community that you have seen to be more beneficial than rather negative? Because we see too much of the negative in this field. But are there individuals or groups that you would say, start following or start watching these people or this person because they're on the right track for what we need in this field?
Well, like I said earlier, I steer clear of making recommendations or advocating any one person because someone else is going to feel slighted. And I do have a lot of friends out there too, and their relative contribution it varies here and there, and I don't want to offend anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes it difficult. You put one person in and somebody else feels left out. I can understand that part of it too. But if you are going to be a representative, a spokesperson in this field, again, there's so many people out there that take that role. I remember listening back to different radio shows where people said they've been abducted 200, 300 times. When you have to kind of stay away from that and stay on focus with your experiences and things that you're talking with other people in this field about, do you find yourself at this point in time finding a direction that this field can benefit from? Because right now what we're seeing a lot of is just knocking down, including villainizing, but just communication. looking to the sky, to the stars. In other words, in a sense, let's say the current day Travis Walton were to meet up with Travis Walton right after that abduction. And who's this good looking guy right here? Let me see. So you were able to talk to him at that time about the experience. What kind of comments would you have for him in a positive sense?
Oh, I think I could, make some wiser choices about who I talk to and what I say at the time. But in general, the advice I would give to people observing these kinds of things is, especially if you're going to comment publicly, stick to facts and logic. You're entitled to feelings, intuitions, enthusiasm, emotions of various intensities. That's all fine, but that's personal. If you're going to comment publicly, whether it be about the paranormal or politics, stick to facts and logic. These are things that can be tested by the people you're speaking to.
Correct.
Making proclamations or pronouncements about things is just somebody, putting their opinion out there.
Can we, George, at your indulgence, our good friend Tom Stewart has a question that I think it's probably worth mentioning really quickly. Let me get it up there.
Go ahead.
Good friend Tom Stewart, do you feel the aliens have attempted to contact or monitor you since the abduction, or was this just a one-off?
Well, for years, I wanted it to be one-off. But if I gave any sort of a claim about anything more, I'd have to prove it. Can't say anything without proving it. Even speaking about unusual animals or geology or just points of interest in the world, I fail constantly having to prove it. So, yeah, there's been things that personally I'm certain of, but I can't make anyone else certain of it because I don't have the proof.
Right.
Like I said, I wouldn't have talked about that in that giant triangle, except that so many reported the same thing, and every one of them didn't know each other.
Yeah, credibility to it, absolutely. Okay. I think we're done with questions. George, please continue.
Yeah, no, I think at this point in time, Travis, and we've only got a few minutes here left. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. And, it's a rare occurrence when you're doing these interviews. We feel very, very privileged to have you on. But again, when we are having the opportunity to speak with somebody such as yourself, there's usually something that we may have missed in a question or in discussion. Is there anything that you would like to bring to light? Any message that you would like to put out there to our listening audience? And again, this will be out there forever and ever and ever. So we would always appreciate that. Something that we may have missed, something that you wish to relay out there to our viewers.
Oh, nothing in particular. I think we've said it. If there's a dramatic movie, understand it's not a documentary. And this new movie, I hope to make much more accurate and more reflective of my current understanding of things. So it's going to have a different tone, but and be more informative. But don't hold me responsible for the things Hollywood does.
Right.
I had no say. Did you know when I got the script to the movie, the entire abduction sequence was missing from the script. They knew I wasn't going to like that, so they didn't even let me have it.
Just briefly, tell us a little bit about your website, if you could.
TravisWalton.com. Just go on there, and I think you can order the book through there.
Yeah, it
There you
talks
go.
about the incident, the book, documentary, witnesses, the witnesses. Are those others that on that night also had experience what you experienced, but from a distance, further from where you were, of course. Is that what that's pertaining to?
The sheriff had on file reports from the people, and some of them I was able to follow up with and got personal letters from. Back in those days, we didn't have cell phones. It's the reason I didn't have a phone of this thing. But also, much of the information that I gained from other witnesses that were in the area at the time, people hunting, fishing, camping over Black Canyon Lake nearby. I have those paper letters, and the sheriff's department received a lot of that information. But we had a new sheriff come into town, and county sheriff, he built himself a really nice looking new office, and he had all
Sounds
those
like a Western.
He had his deputies take all those files out and dig a big hole, throw them in there, and burn them.
Ugh.
Not just mines, but all the records. He just had a really nice office, and he didn't want it cluttered up.
Jeez.
I got to tell you, Sheriff Gillespie, well, you know, in the movie was portrayed as being totally negative, but he had genuine integrity beyond anything you'd normally encounter. A really phenomenal man. He had an opportunity to display that to me earlier when I was a kid. It had nothing to do with this incident. I was in high school. I got a ticket. I went in at the appointed time. The judge wasn't there. The door was locked. So I sat on the step there and waited half an hour, and he never show up. So I went home. Next day, I'm walking down the street. Town marshal arrests me, throws me in jail. I'm furious. This is ridiculous. And then I'm just a juvenile. And we had this incident in Payson, south of here, where 3 or 4 guys on graduation night were out raising hell. They threw them in the jail and left them with no attendant. The gas heater system leaked and they all died. So here we have a minor thrown into jail, and there's no place to sit down. The only place you could sit was the bed, and it was soaking wet. Sink was torn off the wall. So it was a crackerjack jail. I found a broken weld, got out of there, but I was still in the judge's office. So I went up into the attic, came down in the adjoining library. Just so happened the town marshal was in there talking to the librarian. Sweet talking her. I just dropped down, went down, caught a ride, and to the sheriff. Gillespie calls his deputy from Snowflake deputy. He comes walking in there and says, "Yeah, we got us a real bad one here. He just tore up our jail, tore the sink off the wall." Sheriff Gillespie stands up and he points his finger at his deputy. He says, "Woody, don't you lie to me. I was down there a week ago and that sink was torn off the wall then." He got real red in the face. They took me home, took me back to Snowflake. End of story. And the ticket was dropped. The whole charge with escape from jail and vandalism of the jail, all that was dropped because they didn't have a leg to stand on. It was just trumped up charges. But the point of that story is Sheriff Gillespie stood up to his own deputy and said, "Don't lie to me. That's not the way it happened."
Yeah. I mean, that's the way it was back then. Yeah. Simpler times, straight times, but there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Travis Walton, teenage hellraiser.
Yeah,
yeah.
These are the anecdotes that we enjoy, the behind the scenes, without question. Travis, we are up against the clock here. I cannot thank you enough on behalf of Mr. Ken DeCosta and, of course,
So
Bill
much.
Forte, taking time out on your Sunday. And we wish you the best moving forward. And we're going to keep looking to the sky, and we're going to keep looking towards media to see what's coming up, including that movie. So we wish you the best of luck, sir.
Been an
Well, thank
honor.
you.
All the best to you and yours, Travis. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
very
just
much.
keep looking, checking my site for my future events I've got coming up.
Certainly will. Certainly will. And
Like,
if it's anywhere within our areas, make sure you book one in
Philadelphia.
Florida.
Philadelphia, I got one, a couple in Brazil, but there's
Nice.
some other ones stateside.
I'm up in the Northeast, so I may run into you.
Let me hit the Philly one there for sure.
See you around.
You take care of myself, my friend. You take care, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Thank you again.
Good night. What a
Well, that was kind of an honor, wasn't it?
illuminating, and
Great guy.
and Bill, I want to thank Bill also for getting this all set up for us. So appreciate that as well, Bill.
Yeah, thank you. Chat was jumping tonight. Just a quick shout out to
great
everybody
question.
who participated in the show tonight. We love you guys. Remind you, subscribe to Dead Air Full Spectrum. There's all sorts of great content on there. And if you haven't yet, you might be surprised. You actually may be entertained if you're not careful.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, why don't you mention what's going to be coming up this Thursday, Ken?
Tomorrow night is our usual Monday Night Monsters.
Yes.
On Dead Air Full Spectrum. Ron Murphy, Chris Rondine are going to get, I believe, into the legend of the Wendigo tomorrow night. And then Thursday, we have the debut of a great new show with Cody Desbian and Satori Hawes, the paranormal couple, coming to you live from the Haunted Museum. And it's a new show on Dead Air Full Spectrum that's going to be premiering Thursday at 9 p.m. They're on for an hour, and they will be on bi-weekly every other Thursday because they're just so busy these days, right?
Yeah,
Cody's still in chat. Cody's still in chat. Where are you?
For those of you who join us for the first time who don't recognize those names, they're from the television show Ghost Hunters. They are museum owners, and Satori Hawes, of course, is the daughter of Jason Hawes. So you guys definitely want to check them out, and they've got some really incredible items inside their museum. So they're going to be talking about that amongst other things, including their paranormal investigative experiences. So you make sure you guys check that out. We are all out of time here, guys. Again, I want to thank you so much. We are back here next week, same time. You are watching Dead Air Live on Dead Air Full Spectrum. We thank you so much. Have a great rest of the week. Thanks for watching. Good night.